Tyrus has made a lot of headlines lately, for good and for bad, as he became the new NWA Worlds Heavyweight Champion. Just basically, how do you feel about the company's direction with Tyrus as arguably the face? You know, if Camille isn't the face, it's probably Tyrus now.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the direction moving forward? And what do you think the future of the NWA looks like?
Well, if you just kind of look at the recent announcements that we were able to make, the future is very bright for the NWA, especially going into 2023. You know, if it's going to be NWA versus AAA, I don't see how our World Heavyweight Champion isn't figured into that equation.
Absolutely.
And so you also have to keep in mind, you know, I have found that and this might also be because of where I've lived in this world, or at least in this country, you know, a large portion of dedicated independent wrestling fans, or maybe just wrestling fans in general, tend to be kind of left leaning when it comes to their politics. And Tyrus obviously isn't. But that being said, when he came out for Revolution Rumble in Chalmette, Louisiana, which is a, you know, sort of a working class suburb of New Orleans, that building erupted. There were a lot of fans there that wanted to see Tyrus and wanted to cheer for Tyrus. On the other hand, there were plenty of people there that probably hate Tyrus, whether it's, you know, because of what he did in the WWE, or the thoughts that he has and he puts into his book, or the things that he says on Fox News. But I think that that's great. Isn't that what we want in the sport of professional wrestling? You know, I kind of see Tyrus as potentially, really, if you want to take it to wrestling parlance, you could see him as a heel. Well, don't you want to see the heel get beat up? That's the whole point. So if you want to boo him, he elicits an emotional reaction from people, and that's kind of all the job really is. And so you've got this guy who's worked incredibly hard, and, you know, comes from this lineage and this family that's, you know, so ingrained in the sport of professional wrestling. And, you know, for him to be the world heavyweight champion, it's one of those love it or hate it. He's there. He's the top of the mountaintop. And you also can't argue with the fact that I don't know what days particularly he's on Gutfeld, but when he is, he's there. And now he used to have the television championship on his shoulders. He now has the 10 pounds of gold, and that's in front of 2 million people a night. And that's double AEW's audience for Dynamite, for their main program. It rivals Raw. So the exposure that the company gets is I don't know. You couldn't pay for it. You couldn't pay for it in advertising dollars. You could, but you would lose a billionaire's money in that. But I don't think that that's why Tyrus is the world champion. Tyrus is the world champion because he won the triple threat match. And I think that, you know, the direction that we're going to be going in 2023, I think it suits him to be that guy that people are going to be chasing for and attempting to knock off the top of the mountain. And if you take a look at the entire faction as a whole, because you could just look at Tyrus as the world heavyweight champion, but you also have Jordan Clearwater as the television champion.
He's great, by the way.
I love Jordan to death. And you have Sion as the national champion.
Mm-hmm.
And they have two managers. You've got this core of people that have this crew here that now holds, you know, not all the gold, but a lot of it. And that has a lot of power and a lot of sway and a lot of stories that you could tell with that. And so I think that that's so interesting in the position that we're in right now. So I think that what's great is what the NWA is going to end up having is we're going to get two things. We'll get people tuning in who want to see Tyrus get his ass kicked, and they want to see that title be taken away from Tyrus because they hate Fox News and they hate the conservative stance on a lot of stuff. There's a group of people that are going to do that. On the other side, there's the 2 million people who already like him and want to see him succeed and want to see him as champion. So who are we getting? Well, then you get everyone. And that's the goal, is you want to have a place where everyone can come and enjoy pro wrestling. And that's what we have. And I think that that's fantastic, is it doesn't just speak to one crowd. We have both, and it allows for that deliberation, and it allows to have a split crowd too. Sometimes those are really fun.
Almost the John Cena effect, right?
Exactly. It's F.U. Cena, go John. It's the echoing effect that you get with that. And so I think that puts us in a really, really interesting place where we are. And I'm excited for it. I think it's going to do us quite well. And I think at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding, in the fact that, we had a lot of people buy pay-per-views. We had a lot of people show up in New Orleans. We're going to have a lot of people show up in Knoxville. And if it turns out that that's not true, then maybe I was wrong. But I don't think so. It's one of those things where people try to bring the politics into everything. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, I mean, if you take a look at Eastern Tennessee, if you want to break it down just from a political standpoint, I mean, isn't Kane the mayor of Knox County? I mean, who's more conservative than Kane? So that's that whole area has similar thoughts to the way Tyrus thinks of politics. So why wouldn't you think that they wouldn't show up to cheer for him at the pro wrestling show? So it's at the end of the day, yes, Tyrus is the man at the top of the mountain and arguably the face of the National Wrestling Alliance, but the National Wrestling Alliance as a whole has lasted for 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see us going anywhere for another 75 years.
And hey, it's, while we can call him the face or Camille the face,
right,
wrestling has always been a melting pot, right? Wrestling has different people of different races, genders, right, gender identity, age.
Ted, so I'm glad you brought that up, because there's really not a lot of discussion right now. He's also the first African-American NWA Worlds Heavyweight Champion of the Lightning One era.
Mm-hmm.
And the last person to hold that championship since, what was it, R-Truth? Wow. Since, Ron Killings was NWA champion. So it really should be something that's kind of celebrated, to be honest.
That makes sense. But I guess my point is just, even if he isn't your cup of tea, if he is your cup of tea, that's great. If he isn't, there's a lot of people representing many different things in the company who you can attach yourself to. Like, right, there's so many great talents, and not just in the NWA, all over in professional wrestling. And it's what makes professional wrestling great, is because you don't see so many people from so many different backgrounds come together quite like you do in professional wrestling.
Yeah. Well, that's what's the best part of it. That's the best part of it.